Hi Ghosties, I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
One of my favorite episodes that we've done so far was about fairies.
I know, it really was for you.
It really was, and we explained all about what a fairy is and different variations and how something like these mythical creatures have been seen all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
In that episode, we had a real focus on the UK, Europe, briefly touched on sightings in America, and we had a comment on that video, maybe a couple of comments, suggesting we look into duendes.
I've never heard of it.
And that is exactly what we're talking about today, so now you have. They are very similar to gnomes or goblins that kind of fall under the category of fairy, but these are from Spain and many countries in Central and South America. Well, and Mexico, so Americas.
I was assuming Mexico. I don't know why. Just the way you
Spanish.
said it. Yeah.
So I've compiled several stories, including stories from a couple of our listeners, detailing their own encounters with duendes. So if you have heard of duendes or your family has told you of this legend, let us know in the comments. There is only so much we can get to in one episode.
Mm-hmm.
And just like with the fairies episode, it goes so much further beyond what I have the time and capabilities to do in one podcast episode.
Yeah. And who knows? All of the topics we've covered, we can always do more later. I don't plan to stop anytime soon.
That is true. So this is just an overview of what I've learned. But we'd love to have a conversation with you guys. Let us know about a particular duende that you know of in your area of the world or what your family said about it. Drop it in the comments. But beyond that, our tea today is David's Tea Organic Cream of Earl Grey.
It is Earl Grey, but it smells medicine-y.
Questionable.
I don't know how I'm going to feel, but I will say, if you notice, if you are watching on YouTube or Spotify, our mugs, if you're from the South, Texas specifically, you know Bluebell, this is the best ice cream, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, we're not taking questions.
No questions about that. I would also like to say I hate mint chocolate chip, but I liked the green mug.
I'm also more of a Rocky Road kind of person, but pink is my color, so.
Yes, so I picked these out when I went to the Bluebell Fun Run in Brenham, Texas. You will also notice my shirt.
Very exciting.
So if you were there, let me know.
I was not there because another reason why this video is actually switched, if you've noticed, Thursday episode was on Monday, and the Monday episode was Thursday this week because the stomach flu hit my family like a truck.
Yeah, and I'm still scared that she's in my house right now.
Yeah, we've been sick for a very long time. I feel much better, but it was rough, so we had to make do.
But anyways, let's go. I will not lie. I just took a taste of the steam of that.
A taste of the steam.
And I gagged. I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. What was your opinion?
I didn't like it, no.
It smells bad.
I don't know what it is. It is kind of medicinal.
Yeah.
In a way. I don't know what it is about it.
I'm so glad you said medicinal because I was like medicine-y. I could not think of that word.
Same thing.
But love the mugs though.
Mugs
Shout
are
out.
very cute. Very cute. David's Tea has not done us wrong until now. It gets high marks overall. This one's not making the cut.
It's a miss.
Also, if you noticed, our lighting is a little different. We're trying something new. I've been feeling like our light's been a little too bright lately. So let us know also in the comments if you like the lighter, brighter light or the dimmer, more spooky light.
I'm down with anything. I don't care.
Another announcement before we get started. We had a few questions to ask. So you can skip if you just want to get to the video, timestamps down below as usual. But we have been mulling over the idea of starting a Patreon over the last few months. A few of you have even mentioned it before as a way to support us and get a little more ghosties in your life. Before we ask anyone to pay any dollar amount, we want to make sure that you're getting your money's worth out of us. Right now, we're just asking for your time, which is a lot for you busy people. I know how hard it is, and we appreciate you giving us your ear twice a week already. But to ask you for money feels like a different ballgame, and we want to make sure that it's worth it.
It feels horrifying.
Yeah, we all work really hard for our dollars, and we don't want to disappoint anyone spending their money on us.
Agreed, because I would feel such shame. There's not a lot that I can be made to feel bad about, like in terms of like who I am and everything. That is something where I would be like, shame.
Very badly.
Yes.
Yeah. With all that being said, we've thought about giving you videos early, of course, without ads. We're trying to work on getting ahead so that we can give it several days early before the rest of the world gets it. We also thought about doing a live stream once a month. We thought that might be fun. Maybe
I think it'll be fun.
Play some games, watch movies, chat together, that kind of thing. We also thought starting a Discord to chat together, maybe about videos or ideas for future videos or even just, about
anything.
life.
I love to chat. I'll talk to myself. So
we thought a Discord would be fun. But what else do you think would make Patreon worth it for you for Ghosties? Because keep in mind, we do have jobs and children outside. So
unfortunately,
our
not the children. Sorry.
No. Yeah. Wow.
Unfortunately, I do have a job.
Yes, she has a career outside of this. So we're limited at this point in time on adding too much to our plate. In the future, we'll still take some options. So comment down below. Let us know some things that you think would make paying for Patreon worth it. We want to be 100% sure that you're satisfied and giving money to a couple strangers on the internet.
Agreed. 100%.
So we'll move on. Lots of things to comment on today, but we'll move on to why we're here. Duendes. It seems that the term duende comes from dueño de casa, or master of the home in Spanish. It comes from the Spaniards who colonized most of South America many centuries ago, and the term has stuck. The duende is a magical humanoid figure of folklore with variations depending on the country or region of the world you're in. Many countries in Central and South America have their own legends and lore behind the creature, and even in the Philippines, the term duende is used. The term is an umbrella word, like the term fairy in European countries, for creatures that are like gnomes, dwarves, and leprechauns that we spoke of in our fairies episode. So they all kind of resemble that.
Mm-hmm.
The specifics vary, but they tend to be small, anywhere from 1 to 3 feet in height, with faces like old men, sometimes naked, sometimes wearing minimal ragged clothing, and sometimes in various colored old-timey get-ups.
I wasn't expecting them to be naked. I don't know why that
little naked men
shocked me so much. 1 to 3 feet. Is that all the time? Because I know in the fairies episode, you changed everything I've ever thought I've known and told me they're like, yeah, some of them are like 6 feet tall.
So from what I read, duendes are always small.
Love.
They're more like gnomes. They're more tiny in stature.
See, I can get behind this.
Well, a 3-foot humanoid creature. Still a big humanoid creature. That's like my child.
Yeah, but 6 feet tall.
Yeah, it's a little more imposing.
Yes.
Now, I couldn't find many sources to pull from about duendes, at least not many in English. And we all know my Spanish is severely lacking. I can ask like the important questions as a tourist, like, where's the bathroom?
I was just going to say, where's the bathroom?
Or,
water.
Help me.
Help.
That kind of thing. Beyond that, it's rough. So I'll give a brief overview of some of the characteristics for many of the duendes that I came across while looking into it. And then we'll just dive right into the stories at the end.
I'm interested to know if they are as mischievous and everything as fairies.
They can be, yeah.
Do we have any creatures that are very small and cute, Tinkerbell-esque, and they do nothing but good? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell you about one that kind of reminds me of that in a minute.
Because that's what I'm wanting. Unless doing harm to my enemies, then we can keep the gnomes.
God. Okay. Again, it depends on where you are for the particular lore, but the characteristics and their intentions vary greatly. Some are described as good, or at least neither good nor evil. They can be helpful, assisting in creating an abundance with crops or bringing you good luck. They can be mischievous by moving things around your home. If you find something you place in the same spot every single day goes missing, and then you find it several days later, either in the same spot as it always is, or in another high traffic area of your home, like you know you would have looked here, it could be the work of duendes. We kind of talked about that with fairies too.
Yeah.
So a lot of the characteristics overlap. That's mostly why I didn't dive too deep into this, because if you go back and listen to our fairies episode, it's very, very similar. And it
would be repetitive.
They do. Yeah. We had one listener, Nayeli, write to us about duendes in their hometown in Puerto Rico. They titled it Duendes de la Montaña, or Mountain Goblins.
Oh my gosh.
Up in the misty mountains in Las Marias, Laras, and San Sebastian, people say tiny duendes sneak out at night to ride the horses and braid their manes. By sunrise, the poor horses are left dripping in sweat and exhausted. Some say these duendes are just mischievous tricksters, but others warn they can be dangerous. Either way, folks living near the mountains never leave their animals out at night.
I just went through 7 stages of grief just now when you were telling that story. You were like, oh, they ride the horses and braid their mane. I was like, oh, and then you're like, the horses are exhausted. I was like, oh, like I just had a whole...
Sorry to burst your bubble.
Yeah.
But we also had something like that with fairies too, where they got out and they rode the horses and braiding their manes and stuff in European countries and stuff too. It was fairies were blamed for that. Other duendes are purely tricksters looking to cause trouble or mischief, or even simply to freak people out. I read several stories where they saw this like gnome creature standing off in the distance, and they would freak out and they would just hear like like a little snicker, and it just like laughs at them and runs away.
Love. If we can okay, I know I've said it a bunch of times of like what I would come back as and what I would choose. I think it's a very small little just like
okay.
Something.
I could see you.
You'll know.
I could see you.
I'll have a pointy hat.
There are legends of certain duendes lifting the skirts of young women and pinching their legs.
Okay.
Or their butts, I read in some stories. They're just like...
I don't like that.
Yeah, me neither. But the stories do get more sinister than this. Sometimes stories tell of people, particularly young women and children, who are led away by duendes, never to be seen again. And if they're lucky enough to return, they're never the same. So I read a couple of stories of like, oh, my aunt was taken by duendes, and when she returned, like her mind was jumbled and she couldn't function as she used to, and she needed a lot of help.
What do they do?
They just scramble your mind. It's kind of like fairy led, where they just kind of take you off in a daze and you're stuck in that in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I also read some stories that said that if you're a young woman and you're approached by a duende, depending on, you know, which one they are, sometimes they'll like proposition you to like come off and be with them, and you're like, oh, of course, but I need to finish this task first. Can you help me? And you give them an impossible task, like filling a basket up with water, like, you know, like a woven basket, and it's impossible. So they just like either try it forever and they can't get it, or they just get so frustrated, give up, and they walk away. So if you're ever approached by a small creature, maybe try giving them an impossible task. Oftentimes, they're associated with nature. They are sometimes considered the protectors of caves, forests, and rivers. Some believe that they are ancient spirits here to protect the land, and others think they are the spirits of unbaptized children, hiding in the shadows and planning pranks and tricks.
I don't know how I feel about it.
Unsettling.
Yeah, I don't really like that.
No, me neither.
One. I'm going to choose to believe all the lighthearted ones today.
Okay.
Just for my own sanity.
Sounds good. In some places, they are known to live in the walls of people's homes, coming out only at night to cause trouble. There are some stories that they look for unkempt children, and if they find a child with long finger or toenails, they will attempt to cut them off themselves, sometimes missing altogether and cutting an entire toe in the process.
I knew you were about to say that.
I know, I'm sorry. I know, it's horrible. Again, like many legends and folklore, a lot of it sounds like things to protect children.
To like
don't
keep
run
them
off
in
into
line.
the woods because the duendes will take you. Or, hey, you really need to keep clean, otherwise if you don't take a bath and let me cut your nails, then the duendes will come and try to cut them themselves.
You should tell that to your kids.
No.
You wouldn't do something like that? I feel like you would. You don't like even tell small little lies to your kids.
No, I mean, unless I saw a duende like creeping through my home, I don't think I'd tell my children about it. I don't want to scare them, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to scare my children into the mission. I want them to want to do good.
Yeah, well.
It's hard when they're small and they don't want to do good. Where does it come from? The term, the creature. It is thought that many of the similar descriptions, and particularly the name of these creatures across such a vast landscape, could be because of Spain. When the Spanish came to the Americas and the Philippines, along with other Europeans like the Irish, the Scottish, all of that, they brought their own creatures, customs, and legends with them. One of those being Los Duendes. In Spanish folklore, there are various duendes, like fairies across Europe, so various kinds, like the Añañas, I think is how you say it, who are extremely beautiful with long flowing hair that they comb for hours. They're said to be really small.
Oh,
I don't know if they're like this, but like,
and they're just brushing their hair.
They're just brushing their long flowing hair. They're dressed in clothes made of stardust, and they are benign and can help passersby with their great treasures. So they're said to, you know, live by like rivers and streams and stuff. And they have in their caves great wealth and treasure.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
And sometimes if people are coming down on their luck or whatever, they can maybe help them if they feel that they should be helped. And they also bless the waters, trees, farms, and herds of people in the area as long as they're respected.
This is what I wanted all of the fairies and lore and stuff to be.
Well, that's kind of where it ends. I'm sorry.
I just wanted the Tinkerbell fantasy. You know I've been a Tinkerbell fan.
I know, forever. Then there are the Buscosos, which are tall, bearded, and dressed in moss and leaves. They play sad songs on their flutes, help guide lost shepherds through the forests, and help repair barns that have collapsed due to bad weather. So they're sad, but they're still good.
Yeah.
There are also the Dianos, which are more mischievous and disguise themselves as horses, cows, and other domestic animals. They scare people walking about at night and can disorient people out searching for their own animals. You may be led astray, like maybe your sheep got out and you're going and searching for your sheep, so they'll disguise themselves as a sheep. And you're like, oh, maybe that's one of my flock, and you'll follow it off into wherever it leads.
Oh, no. No.
Or the Trascos, who love to enter people's homes and hide. They move things around and steal at night, throw seeds and pebbles at people who pass by, and can turn your children naughty.
That's fine, but don't hide in the house. I'm fine with the seeds and the pebbles and, you know, do your thing, but don't hide at my house.
Yeah,
a lot of
them
scared me.
Kind of like brownies, they'll hide in your home, unseen, and just move things around how they want them to be.
You know what? This podcast is ruining my life because this morning, I'm being so serious. This morning, because most of the time when Ryan leaves in the morning, I'll see him leave, I'll hear the door shut, something, but I'm right back asleep. For some reason this morning, I fully woke up and was like aware that he was leaving. And I was like, no, I want like 20, 30 more minutes of sleep. I laid down, I was like, and I couldn't. I was scared.
Oh,
I was thinking of, what is it? Ryan's not here.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It was like, Chris isn't here anymore.
Yeah.
Or this isn't Chris. Whatever. I was thinking about it and I was like, anyways, I'm
Maybe
going to
I
get
should
up.
get up. I'm so sorry that
Hey, I was
I've
early to
done
work
that.
though. Unheard of.
You know what? It all works out for the best. Well, in Spain, sorry to move on from your
Sorry,
your troubles.
I had to tell you that.
In Spain, there are other more evil ones, but we'll move on because I want to more focus on closer over here. In the Philippines, the duende, so it's also called a duende, it's just spelled differently, often dwell in rocks, caves, old trees, large anthills, and termite mounds. Like, have you seen the really big termite mounds?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay, you have to see.
I've only ever seen termites one time in my life, and they were on a piece of wood outside.
Okay, well, they get huge.
Why are they so big?
They need a lot of space. They got a lot of brethren.
I hate that a lot.
The duendes
Hide in there like termites.
Well, they live in there.
I like more Keebler elf style in the tree.
They can be either good or bad, just like those in Spanish legend, and are more often seen by children. If you offend them by stepping on or getting too close to their homes, it's believed that they can put a curse on you. You must say tabi tabi po, which means basically excuse me, to show respect as you pass by to not incur their wrath. They can make you severely ill, cause great issues in your life, and even kidnap children. So if they feel disrespected, they can make you like have rashes or an illness that just medicine cannot fix.
It's a good thing I'm like respectful to all.
Yeah.
Like if I scare a bird off a fence, I'm like, sorry.
Yeah, well, the duendes would like that too. But there are some variations of these duendes that can be seen as good. They can bring you enchanted gifts and befriend you. So on a website I found called the Aswang Project, one writer wrote of the Kaibon, I think is how you say it, which they described as, quote, big as a child, fair skin, long nose, slant eyes, long hair that reaches down to their feet, and toes that point backwards. Their feet are on backwards, basically. So this duende, this mythical creature, could bring a coat that makes you invisible, as well as a dipper that is, when placed inside an empty jar, could produce rice to those they befriend. So like you always
what a
have
power.
rice, right? I'd love that. There's also the lampong that has the ability to transform into a white deer with one single bright eye on its forehead and protects wildlife in the forest. And supposedly, so says this writer, that hunters know it well out in the forests of the Philippines. I know we have some Filipino listeners, so let us know in the comments what else there is to know about duendes on the islands and what other duende lore that's important to know.
We have family there.
We do. So when I first heard the term duende, I immediately thought of Latin America. So just really anything south of us.
Me too.
Even in southern US. And so that's where we're going now. In Latin America, people have been telling stories of duendes for generations. There are some who are believed to be the guardian spirits of nature and live in the forests and jungles all throughout the continent. And I've heard many stories of people who live in Mexico whose families, either jokingly or not, claim that the duendes are responsible for their missing belongings. So I read a lot of stories on Reddit that were like, well, I don't know much about duendes, but when things go missing in our house, my dad's always like, oh, it must be the duendes. They are also believed to lure children away and into the wild in some parts of South America. I read of one story of a duende disguising itself as a poor old man, and if asked for food or money and you don't help them, then you could be hit with negative consequences. So like he'll disguise himself as just a small old man. Like, I need food, I need money. And if you just like disrespect him and pass him by, then he'll put a curse on you, basically.
When you said hit them with misfortune, I thought you meant like literally
beat them with
hit them.
No,
yeah.
No. Maybe your crops don't grow well that year, or your car breaks down, or sometimes your life could be in real danger. Spain obviously had a huge impact on Latin America, particularly when it comes to the duende. But it seems that small humanoid figures like those that have been spotted throughout the Americas may actually predate colonization, which we talked about this a little bit in our fairies episode, that a lot of Native American tribes have their own stories of the little people.
Yep.
Indigenous people in the Americas have been talking about gnome-like creatures for many, many years before the Europeans even arrived. And per usual, each region has a different species with different personalities, names, and characteristics. Two that I found pretty interesting, and they seem to be with the Mayans and the Aztecs, were the Alush and the Cheneque. The Cheneque seem to be of Aztec origin and are sprite-like creatures who live in nature. They're often depicted as naked and are protectors of the nature that they surround themselves with. They can cause people who wander near their homes to get lost or confused, and can even separate your soul from your body. So you'll get in such a state of confusion that your soul just completely comes apart from your body.
Sorry, bringing it back to Scooby-Doo. You're just one of those little heads floating in the big
Essentially.
tub.
Yes.
Scary.
So if this happens, only a specific ceremony would be able to return your soul to your body and make you all right. It is said that you can leave offerings of candy or fruit to the Cheneque as protection for yourself or your home. A lot of videos that I watched in Mexico specifically they will buy dolls of like duendes and leave offerings in their home to the dolls of the duende and in hopes of bringing them good fortune. There's even a whole museum of the duende.
That is interesting. One day I'm gonna get really deep into all the stuff we're talking about, and I'm gonna have all the things going on at once in the house.
Oh, you're gonna have every single possible ritual and
just
offering.
trying to bring all the good luck and wealth.
In the Yucatan Peninsula and some parts of Belize and Guatemala and other locations where the Mayans reigned live the Alush. Like most of those we've talked about today, they are considered mischievous and can even cause you harm. But if you treat them well, they can bring you good luck. There is one legend that says when a farmer builds a small home on his property, most often in a maize field, then the Alush will come. For the next 7 years, they will tend to the crops, summon rain, and patrol the fields at night, making sure no one's stealing the crops or there's no one like coming in to cause harm. But at the end of those 7 years, the farmer must board up all the windows and doors to that small home and seal the Alush inside. If you don't, then they will run wild, playing tricks and wreaking havoc on the farm and people who live nearby. Your luck is good for 7 years, but after that, I'm on my own and I can do whatever I want.
They're just like gremlins.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh my God.
Some Mayan temples and pyramids contain depictions of these small creatures, and there are legends that say the Alush were the first inhabitants of Earth and are even older than the sun.
Very interesting.
My favorite Alush story comes out of Cancun. In the 90s, when workers began construction on the bridge leading to the international airport, they ran into some trouble with these small beings. And this is on the Cancun's website, their airport website, everything.
No way.
The legend, okay? They would work long, hard days on the bridge, but every time they showed up the next morning to continue their work, the whole thing would be taken apart or in ruins, just completely destroyed. After several days of trying to get the construction going, they went to the authorities to try to catch who could be causing such vandalism to their project. And they were shocked because it was a lot of harm done with no use of heavy machinery. Their machines were locked and kept in the same place.
And it's just destroyed.
Destroyed overnight. No one was ever caught doing this. The employees were getting fed up with having to redo their work over and over and decided to take matters into their own hands. So they stood guard one night to catch the person in the act. What they saw, rather than people, were small beings using only their hands and ancient tools to deconstruct the bridge, all while the city slept. It was then that they called a Mayan priest so that they could intervene and ask for permission for the city to build this much-needed bridge. The priest said that in order to gain their permission, they would have to first build a small pyramid under the structure for these beings. And so they did. Once the Alush pyramid was built, they continued on with their bridge and they never had trouble again. And I have a photo of this bridge.
The Great Pyramids debunked. Explain.
It's all for the Alush.
Imagine. What?
They have their own little pyramid under the bridge. Now, I don't know if it's still there. I assume it's still there, or at least something like that is still there.
That is so cool.
Isn't that cute?
Confirmed. They're real.
At least
to
says
me,
the Cancun government.
It's real to me. I don't care. There's evidence.
No, I believe it. I believe, like I said, I believe there's at least something similar to something like this.
You know,
I'm a believer in the Fae. I just am.
In the first, in our fairies episode, I was very much like, okay, diva. I wasn't really in it, but now I feel like I'm being converted.
Good.
I'm into it.
I've just been working on you, chipping away slowly.
Yeah.
So I have some stories, several from just the internet, from around, and then 2 from our listeners.
I'm excited for the listeners. Are those last?
Yes, I saved them for last. Of course I did. The best for last. Hey, I'm from Costa Rica, and this folklore is heavily instilled in children so they don't go running off to become a duende with the forest folk. Last time I visited the country, I was sleeping on the floor and was awoken calmly in the middle of the night. At the end of the bed, there was this shadow figure, 2 feet, stocky and robust, just watching me sleep. I didn't feel disturbed or even offended. I felt well guarded and watched over. So I went back to bed without a second thought. I even invited the duende to stay as long as they'd like. When I awoke, my dad told me, who was sleeping in the living room over, that he was woken up in the middle of the night and the back patio door in his field of vision from the couch had opened slowly during the middle of the night and he heard something come in. Emotionally, he responded the same way and just went back to sleep, as if the creature had a connection or relationship or responsibility to be there. At a heart-based level, neither one of us questioned why or how it was there.
That's fine. I feel fine with that. If I experienced something similar and my soul was at rest and at ease, not at rest. If my soul was just kind of at ease and it wasn't scary, it's okay, then nothing to worry about.
To wake up in the middle of the night and see your door open though, and you're just it's probably fine.
I would just be oh, it's the dogs or the birds that live on my porch.
They learned to open the door.
Dude. Okay. Side tangent. Sorry. I have a nest that is on my porch and it's been there for as long as I've lived here, what, 4 years almost? There's a bird's nest and it gets used like every spring. There's a new set of baby birds that show up. There's a bird currently that every time I walk out my door, it posts up and it looks at me and it doesn't break eye contact. And every time I walk out, I go, sorry. And I cover my head.
It's just protecting its baby.
I'm a prisoner in my home. I'm scared every time I open the door. And then there's 2 other birds that I think want that nest. So they sleep up at the top watching the nest.
Oh, I don't like that.
They're different kinds of birds.
I don't like that at all.
At first I thought they were like together, but I think the 2 blue ones want the gray one or want the nest.
Okay, moving on to away from your fear, back to the Duendes. So my first one, I'll start with my mother since my uncle's story is far more interesting. When my mom was around 2, her parents would leave her in a crib in the room nearby the kitchen. So to give you all a visual, my grandparents' kitchen in Mexico has 2 doors. One that leads to the yard that was not fenced, and they had a few acres with a river going through it and lots of mango trees to give you an idea of how big their land is. And the other door leads to the living room where my mother's crib was. That living room also leads to another part of their yard. So regardless, when you leave the home, you are either going into a forest or going into more forest at that time. Now, of course, most of that forest is torn down since my grandparents sold most of their land. So my mom told me that her mother had set her down in her crib and left her alone just for a few minutes and went to the kitchen to go do something. And when she came back to get my mother was gone. There was dirt and little handprints in the crib. My grandmother and the rest of the family, mind you, this is Mexico, very common for multiple family members to live in the same house, especially this one since my grandma and grandpa built this house themselves and they have 8 children, with my mom being the 3rd youngest. So anyway, a search party ensues and they can't find my mom. They're searching for hours and they finally decide to return home. My grandma is in tears, and upon returning to the house with everyone there, my mom's crying in her crib, covered in dirt and more little handprints around the crib and on her clothes.
Whoa.
So of course, this could be anything, maybe kids of another family, and there's no proof that she was taken by Duendes and then brought back. But whose kids decided to sneak into my grandmother's house? There was so much land back then, and these handprints were little. My grandmother has described them as belonging to a toddler. So how could a toddler pull a 2-year-old out of the crib? But multiple Duendes could. They were notoriously known for mischief, and in Mexico, there were tales of Duendes kidnapping children. So my grandma still, to this day, thinks that it was them who took my mom, maybe to go play or something, and then brought her back unharmed, but covered in dirt.
Okay, I was gonna say, it could be anyone but the little handprints. We just have like the little rascals, like a gang of little children.
A gang of toddlers stealing other children from their beds.
I don't think so.
That one freaked me out.
Yeah, that's
I don't like
little...
that at all.
No.
I don't like it at all. At least they brought her back.
That is true, because if not, do you just turn into one? You just assimilate Tarzan style? Just
I don't know. And I don't know if there's anything like a changeling in this legends and lore, if you remember what a changeling is. No?
Not really.
So the changeling was basically the fairies would steal the children.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
leave
yeah.
a fairy changeling in their place that was sick and like most of the time would die. And I don't know if there's like a changeling type of thing in a Duende. And in the comments, someone's like, OMG, is your mom a changeling? And she's like, am I half changeling?
That is pretty crazy.
The next story, carrying on from the same person. So my uncle has always been very calm and collected and just peaceful. I don't know, it's weird to describe his reaction to when I asked him about his experience and him kind of snapping at me. It was just bizarre. So when I was 13, I was in Mexico visiting the fam, and I remember hearing about these Duendes, and I was so curious and wanted to hear it from my uncle himself. I just shouldn't have even asked. It triggered him. He had fear in his eyes and just looked visibly upset, and he told me, no, I'm not talking about this.
Oh.
Me being ashamed and guilty for bringing this fear on him, dropped it and walked away. Later that evening, my uncle took my aunt, my mom, and my 2 sisters and I to a restaurant in another pueblo. So we're at dinner, and my uncle apologizes for reacting the way he did. He then proceeds to tell me that he just didn't want to speak about them at his house. The same house my grandparents built.
Oh.
The same house my mother was kidnapped at when she was 2. He's at his friend's house. They're smoking a cigarette outside, enjoying the weather, and just hanging out. My uncle gets this strange feeling of being watched. Ignores the feeling. His friend goes inside to grab a drink, and my uncle is out there alone. He's looking around and sees a small man. So, this little man was about a foot or so, dressed like an elf/leprechaun. Very fairy tale-ish. So he's just in shock, staring. He doesn't even believe it himself, and he's just staring. This little man, Duende, gives my uncle a smile, but not a friendly smile. More of a grin of, you see me, this is true, and I'm here to enlist fear. My uncle is frozen, and out comes his friend who drops his drink. His friend screams, and my uncle looks over at him, And right there, they both know that they're seeing what they're both seeing. No hallucination. They turn to look at the duende, and the duende is calling them over with a hand gesture. My uncle looks at his friend and tells him, "Vámonos," like, let's run. So they dart out of the patio and run to a car and drive off. They are scared. My uncle drives them to his house. His friend wasn't going to stay at his house alone, so of course they stayed the night. So fast forward, the rest of my family is home, and they can see that the uncle and their friend are shaken up. They're asking what's going on, and my uncle refuses to speak because he's superstitious and believes that if you speak about them, they'll appear or hear you. Being convinced that he's safe and not in danger, he tells the family about what happened. Of course, everyone believes him because in Mexico, speaking of duendes isn't uncommon. So my uncle's room is on the 3rd floor of my grandma's house. From the 3rd floor, you can overlook most of the land. So he's up there smoking with his friend again, and they both just avoid talking about what happened. They're having a smoke, and my uncle gets overwhelmed with the same feeling he had earlier. The feeling of not being alone. He tells his friend that they should step back in. So my uncle goes inside with his friend, and my uncle tells him that he's going to go downstairs. Friend goes to sleep, and my uncle goes downstairs to make his way to the yard. My uncle has always been super in tune. I personally think everyone has a sixth sense, and maybe my uncle's ability is to be able to see and communicate with the paranormal. He goes outside and looks out into the land. We all know what he's looking for. He's keeping an eye out, and there it is. So what he describes this time is that the duende is sitting on this tree. This duende is sitting with his legs crossed and makes a hand gesture to my uncle, saying, "Come here." My uncle nearly craps himself from how scared he is. He can't believe that he's seeing the same little man. He said that he yelled at it to go away and to leave him alone. The duende jumps up and walks away. My uncle goes back inside the house and wakes his friend up and tells him all about the incident. Both are scared and stay up together. The next day, they tell my grandma, and after this, they go to church to get a blessing. Everything's fine for a couple of months until it visited again.
Oh my God, I thought we were done.
Nope, not yet. My uncle was having dreams about this duende coming to visit him and offer an exchange to him. More time passes and the duende reappears. My uncle said that it was the same tree, but this time he's holding a little bag. What is presumed that that's in this bag is money. I read in the comments the exchange was like this duende will give them money for a life.
Oh, whoa,
So if
okay.
they offer up another life, another person to the duende, then the duende will offer them money in exchange.
And what is it doing with this person?
I don't know what
Anything
they do.
at once?
I guess so. But I also read that in some stories that the duendes will give you money. I heard one story where this musician was playing with his band late at night and was walking back home and saw this little group of like little people, these duendes in the forest around a fire, and they saw him with his instrument in hand. They're like, "Hi, come over here. We'll pay you if you play us a song." So he's like, okay, whatever. And he walks over and he plays this one song with the duendes, and they give him a big bag of gold. And he's like, "Oh yeah, wow, not even an hour passed and I get this giant bag of gold. I'm going to go home to my wife." Gets home and his wife is like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "What do you mean? I'm coming home." He's like, "It's been years." And he looks behind her and she's got kids that aren't his. And his like bandmate is her new husband.
Oh, the betrayal.
But it's been so many years. They thought he just left.
Oh.
And he was like, "No, I was out. I made money for our family," and hands her the bag. And instead of gold, it's just a bunch of little pesos.
That's a good movie. That's so sad.
It is really sad. So like even in the exchanges and the offerings, you could just
Still getting tricked.
like fool's gold, like a leprechaun.
Mm-mm-mm.
Oh, but back to this person's story. By the end of it, he saw it one more time. So he was like really scared, saw it one more time, and like eventually just left the city, like moved out and went to a whole new city.
Dude, after like the third time, I'm packing it up too. I mean,
Yeah.
the first time would have been enough for me personally, but the second time, the third time?
On a totally different night after you've been dreaming about it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. Our next story. So sorry, we started off strong with like a good, like happy story.
Yeah.
And now we're just like diving into terror.
All right, cool.
My aunt also shared her personal experiences with the duendes. She said that one late afternoon, she was outside playing with her sister near a ditch. All of a sudden, they heard voices calling them over. And when they looked at who was calling them, they saw duendes. They said they saw two little creatures about 10 feet away, and her sister wanted to follow them, but she stopped her. My aunt told her sister that they needed to walk back to their house and tell their mom what had happened. When they got back home, their mom explained what could have happened to them and told them that they were not allowed to be outside once it was nighttime anymore.
Duh.
Well, they were children. They're like,
I know,
"Oh,
but-
let's go play with this fun little creature."
That's okay. Never mind. Well, if what you're describing what you described previously was like a wrinkly old naked man that's just a foot tall.
One of them. Some of them are just like look like gnomes.
Like normal people, just a foot tall.
Small, yeah. And most of the time they're older, not like all wrinkly but like older
I'm thinking like
jolly looking things.
like a baked apple face. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Like
and
soggy.
maybe some of them, but not all of them.
I don't know.
They just look like people, like small little people.
Okay.
Our next story. During one of the nights that we were going to sleep over, my cousins and I had all positioned our sleeping bags so that our heads would face towards my aunt's backyard, where her water fountain was, and our feet faced the door that led to the giant foyer/front porch area. We all got tired around midnight, so we all fell asleep except for my cousin. She said that while she tried to go to sleep, she immediately began to hear children laughing. She said that she could hear them all laughing and that she knew that they were near the fountain area since she could hear them super close. She said that she immediately closed her eyes and did not open them because she was scared that she was going to see something she did not want to see. She knew that it was something sinister because the children laughing did not sound like normal children, and the laughter made her skin crawl.
Me too.
Eventually, she ended up falling asleep and then told us all the next day while we had breakfast. After telling my aunts and uncles, they told us that the laughter my cousin had heard were from the Duendes and not from children. From then on, she requested to sleep in one of the bedrooms with my mom because she was super afraid of seeing or hearing the Duendes again. Thankfully, it never happened to her again. Mind you, there were no cousins younger than my brother who was 7 years old, and he was knocked out. So it couldn't have been any of them.
So there was no one playing a prank?
Next story. I saw a duende once when I was a kid. It's the only paranormal experience I've ever had, and it was creepy as hell. Essentially, I was taking a nap and was woken up by the bed moving up and down, and when I opened my eyes, I saw one jumping at the foot of my bed. We locked eyes. I was paralyzed with fear. He laughed at me, an audible laugh, jumped off the bed, and ran away into the hallway. I screamed as loud as I could, and when I told my mom the story, she admitted to believing me as my aunt had seen one in the same house as a kid. I had never heard that story prior, which was validating and made me feel like I wasn't just hallucinating. So to have the same experience as your aunt did years prior.
We wouldn't be in the house. We wouldn't be there.
Like if you knew I had an experience like that, you wouldn't live in the house ever again?
Yes, 100%. No.
Our next one. I'm here because my gardener believes he saw something unusual in our alley tonight. He parks his work truck in our alley for easy access into our backyard. We are in Scottsdale/Phoenix, and most neighborhoods have alleys. He called me frantically, saying he spotted a little man about 1 foot tall standing by his trailer. According to my gardener, the tiny figure was laughing and giggling, seemingly amused by the situation. Naturally, my gardener didn't want to approach it, and it seemed like the little man found it funny that he was stopping my gardener from doing his work. My gardener said it scared the crap out of him. He exclaimed, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this in my life. It was literally about 1 foot tall." Then it ran away. I called my cousin to tell him about it, and the first word out of his mouth was El Duende. I had talked to my gardener about 30 minutes before it happened. He seems totally normal, coherent, and he would have zero reason to make this up. I believe him 100%. Now, for what it was, I don't know.
It is what your cousin said.
Could you imagine 30 minutes prior, he's like, "Hey, I'm heading to your house. You know, everything's great." And then he's like, I can't do my work. I'm sitting outside your house right now.
Would you
say little man,
little guy laughing at me? Would you be afraid to approach it?
Yeah.
If it's like 1 foot tall.
Because what kind of magic does it have? Is it going to bewitch me?
I mean, if it was going to do that, I can do it from far away.
I guess, but I don't know.
And if it wanted to, it just would anyway.
But it seems to get joy out of frightening people.
Just scaring you. How many duendes do you think you could take in a fight if they're all 1 foot tall and they're all coming
I'd
at you?
faint immediately.
Okay, but like if you didn't faint, if they're all coming at you at one time, how many?
I don't know, like 4,
Only 4?
maybe 5.
I was having this conversation at work today about like how many first graders do you think you could take on like realistically? I said a solid 6 or 7.
If I'm trying to hurt them, maybe more.
But they're trying to hurt you.
Yeah, I guess.
So they're all coming at you full force.
I don't know. Honestly, none. My body would go numb and paralyzed. I'm not a fighter.
I think I could take a solid 6 or 7, max 10 first graders if they're small. Duendes, I'm thinking if they're not like, you know, like Dobby, like snapping and, you know, poofing whatever they want.
I think the general consensus is they have magic of some kind. They have special abilities. I mean, obviously they can make themselves invisible because you don't always see them.
I'm saying 3 to 5.
This is an interesting conversation, but we should move on.
Comment below how many duendes could you take in a fight? No weapons, just your fists.
So absurd. Okay, yeah, I'd
and
like to know.
And your legs.
Okay, anyway, let's move on. Our next story is as titillating as that conversation was. Let's move on. So I saw it no more than 2 meters away from me. This one looked scared and shocked that I had discovered him. I believe I was even more scared than him, honestly. I was walking through a golf course at midnight with my friend when we suddenly saw something coming out from a bush to cross the golf cart road where we were coming from. Initially, I thought it was a skunk with its tail up because it looked pointy, and it was the most logical explanation for me. At first, it didn't notice us. But then, when we came closer, we could notice it was a thing walking on 2 legs, 30 centimeters tall. I asked my friend, "Is that a skunk?" Then the thing noticed us approaching and turned around with a facial expression of being caught and frightened. I even remember hearing him give a huge gasp. He looked over at us frozen, and so we did the same as him. Me and my friend and the goblin stared at each other frozen for about 3 seconds. He was only moving his human-like eyes. Then my friend started screaming, "What is that? Is that a child? Is that a baby?" Which was very shocking to see, like a 2-month-old baby walking so smoothly in a golf course at midnight. Then, because of my friend screaming, he ran away fast and got lost on the field. It didn't even cross our minds of chasing him because we were shocked. We just went back to our houses, not discussing what in the world just happened until the next day because we still couldn't believe what we just saw. The duende looked like a tiny human adult face and baby body. He had only white underpants that looked more like a diaper made of rags. No shirt and no shoes. His hair was like an afro-type cone-shaped, black-colored with a thick white stripe in the middle. That's why I thought it was a skunk tail at first. His facial expressions looked very cartoony. I'm also surprised how fast they can run. They move their legs so freaking fast. I am convinced they are afraid of us because of our size compared to theirs. I suppose they only come out at night and in rural zones or open spaces to avoid human contact. After that, and after seeing other paranormal activity, makes me think of the existence of other planes, realms, and dimensions. Now it makes sense to me why so many people talk about seeing them. A lot of cultures talk about them, tales, books, etc. The idea of these creatures has been around for centuries, and it's because people have seen them. I hope more people could share their story. Here in Mexico, there are a lot of stories of duendes going into homes to steal stuff or move your belongings around. And they drew a picture, and it was kind of... Have you ever seen the movie Trolls?
Yes.
It's kind of like that. Or like the doll trolls.
Mm-hmm.
Like wearing
I love those.
like a diaper-y rag.
But I'm just wondering, you know how whenever because babies have like big heads, and if you put their arms up, it like...
They don't cover, yeah.
Is that what's going on here? What's the arm situation and the head size situation?
I would assume it's similar to a baby, because they said it looked like a 2-month-old baby, but
Yeah,
running.
I think that's why I was thinking of that.
Our last 2 stories, listener stories.
Ooh.
Story number 1's from Roxanna. Hello, my name is Roxanna, and I have enjoyed y'all's podcast since last year, mid-August. I am so happy with how far y'all have come. I love hearing y'all when I'm working, and I drink my green tea while I listen. I work in a law firm, and hearing these stories help me so much to relax, scared, and focus my attention on something else. My mom is not a ghost believer. She tells us always, quote, "Don't be scared of the dead, be scared of the living."
Ooh.
Solid advice.
True.
However, when my family and I were all gathered together, we were talking about stories from when they were in Mexico. My mom tells us that when she was younger, she would go over to her friend's house who had a younger sister. Let's call them Sophia and Lisa. My mom's friend Lisa and her were in her room talking on the bed. Lisa had her bedroom door open, and they saw someone run past. They both assumed it was Lisa's younger sister, Sophia. Lisa told her to stop running around and to go back to her room. They heard noises in the kitchen, and my mom and Lisa both got up to get Sophia to go back to her room. However, when they got to the kitchen, they didn't see anyone. They both got scared and ran to see where Sophia was. She was in her room. They both ignored what happened and went on with their girls' night. As it got late, my mom was ready to leave when Sophia went to Lisa's room. She was at the doorway and asked for a snack. Lisa and my mom were still kind of scared to go to the kitchen, so before my mom left, they went together. As my mom was helping Lisa, they had their back to Sophia. Then they heard Sophia say, "El quien es? Who is he?" They both turned to see something run the same size as what they saw run by when they were in Lisa's room earlier. They both screamed, and Lisa grabbed Sophia and ran to her room. They waited until her parents came home, and they told them what had happened. Lisa's dad asked Sophia, how did he look? And she described a small man who was really ugly, and she shrugged and asked for her snack. My mom and Lisa knew it was a duende. A lot of things would go missing or be placed elsewhere when they knew they would be placed in a certain spot. My mom still isn't a believer and hates hearing about ghost stories, but her telling us this story, we were all spooked.
Yeah.
So thank you, Roxanna. She also had a couple of other stories that we'll talk about in our next listener stories. They just didn't fit in the duende category.
Okay.
But they were good too. Our last story comes from Marci. Hey again, Ghosties Pod. I don't know if you're still taking listener submissions. We are. But after hearing my Sally story on the podcast, which I totally forgot I even sent in, I got so excited that I ran to ask my mom if she had any more creepy stories like that. Turns out, she has plenty. From tales of being possessed as a kid to things currently happening in this house. Things I had no idea about. I'll have to get more details on those later, but for now, I wanted to share something from way back in my childhood. Like so far back that I was barely 6 months old when this happened.
Ooh.
Before I get into that though, I need to give you some of the shallow lore I know about the creatures that apparently tried to kill me as a baby. So, duendes, or as they're sometimes called in English, gnomes or leprechauns, are figures from Hispanic folklore. Depending on the story, they can either be harmlessly mischievous or outright malicious. According to my mom, though, she's never heard of a friendly one, and they especially like to target young children. sometimes even living inside the walls of their bedrooms. Anyway, on to the story. One morning, my mom was feeding me breakfast. My dad was at work, and the only person in the house besides herself and me was my aunt. Suddenly, they both heard a knock at the front door. Now, from what she said, they hadn't been expecting anyone, but they figured maybe my grandma or another family member had just decided to drop by for a surprise visit. I was my mom's first baby, after all. However, when they opened the door, no one was there.
Sorry, that's more horrifying than anything we've ever talked about. A surprise
unexpected
visit?
I know. I know.
The horror.
If I don't expect someone coming to my home, I really don't open my door.
There's a knock on the door, I go. Like,
Most
if
of the
I
time
don't
freeze,
move, they won't hear me.
And then sometimes I'll look through the peephole.
I get scared, though. My heart races. I go. Because I feel like they can see me.
Stand on the very tip of my toes to see my peephole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a feat just to get up there, and I'm like looking at the bottom of my eye.
I just hide. But your kids go,
"Who is here?" Oh, and I'm like,
"Shh,
not us."
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. My aunt stepped outside to check if someone was walking away or if maybe some kid was pulling a prank and running off after knocking on the door, but nothing. We just have a story about this.
Mm-hmm.
That they knocked on the door at the hotel and they opened and invited something in.
Yes.
So terrifying. Anyway, the street was completely empty. They shrugged it off anyway as kids, having knocked and ran away and went back inside.
Did it run in at the bottom?
Oh, I hate that. Now I'm going to look down at my feet every time I open my door.
Just don't open your door. Keep doing what you're doing.
A few days later, my mom started to suspect that maybe she had accidentally let something in that day. She had been doing laundry one afternoon after leaving me in my baby rocker nearby when she noticed it suddenly starting to rock on its own. At first, she thought maybe it was just me moving or a particularly strong draft or something, but when she reached out to stop it, the moment she let go, it started moving again. Now, my mom is your stereotypical superstitious Mexican mother, so she immediately started demanding whatever spirit was messing with my rocker to leave me alone. Unfortunately, instead of stopping, the rocking just got faster. It was only when she started praying in Spanish that it finally stopped, my rocker going almost unnaturally still. Now, my mom had dealt with the supernatural her whole life, so while this freaked her out, she hadn't known what it was at the time. She figured that since prayer seemed to make it leave me alone, she'd just have to put in a little more effort to pray over me or bless me with an egg that night, until she woke up to me screaming. Not normal baby crying or fussing. This was a terrified, gut-wrenching scream unlike anything she'd heard from me before. She jumped out of bed and ran to my nursery, throwing the door open, and her heart dropped with dread, because there, standing on my chest, was what looked like a tiny, shadowy creature she had never seen before. The second she stepped inside, it jumped off me and bolted towards the darkest corner of the room, vanishing into the shadows. Shaken, she rushed forward to pick me up and calm down my frightened crying, only to freeze. All over my crib were tiny, child-sized handprints leading into the hallway, covering every inch of the bathroom walls. At this point, my mom was terrified. She grabbed me, took me to her room, and held me in her arms all night. I woke up screaming the same way for several more nights before there was another knock at the door. Having learned from her mistake, my mom checked the peephole first this time. To her relief, it was an older Hispanic lady holding Jehovah's Witness pamphlets. After inviting her in, my mom desperately started explaining everything that had been happening and asked for help. That's when the woman told her what was happening. When my mom had opened that door that day and found no one there, she had unknowingly invited a duende inside. The knocking, that was the duende asking for permission to enter. And by opening the door, my mom had let it in.
No.
She said the only way to protect me was to get me baptized. So the very next day, my mom took me to the local church to get both baptized and have a priest say a prayer of protection. After that, the activity in the house had completely stopped. Though, in the end, she still ended up moving out of that house as soon as she could, just in case. Before this, I have never even heard of duendes, so I asked my mom why one had been standing on my chest that night. She told me that's how they take children. They use their full weight to press down on their chests, waiting for them to suffocate and die, before running off with their souls.
Oh my God.
So dark. So, yeah, definitely not getting any sleep tonight. My only small comfort is that duendes almost always target children, and this house hasn't had a kid in it for years. Even still, I will never answer the door without checking the peephole first. Unfortunately, despite the prayer of protection, according to my mom, things are still happening in this house that I had no idea about. I'll have to get more details, but when I do, you can bet I'll be sending in more stories. Best wishes, Marci.
Please do. Also, the baby in the crib, the dirty little handprints. I'm convinced.
Especially, like the other one was just a story, from the internet. Like you said before, 50-50. This is a listener's mother telling them.
You know what?
You were almost taken from me by a duende.
I don't know what has happened to me over the last year and a half we've been doing this. I'm convinced. I don't know. At the end
Now
of,
you're on par with me.
dude, at the end of fairies, I was like, okay. I feel like if I go back and listen now, I'll be like, yeah.
Fully
Yeah.
on board.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm not, and I mean, we talk about it when we don't really believe in something. I'm not fully on board with everything being attributed to a duende or a fairy or anything like that. But I believe there is definitely something out there.
They exist, at least.
Yes.
In some capacity. Even if it's not the exact, like, little gnome guy. There's something.
There's something there.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in that realm of, like, the fae, the duende.
And you know how in our sleep paralysis episode, you're talking about the little guy on your chest? What if they're duendes coming to take
instead
people?
of, like, the old hag, it's just a duende?
Yeah.
That's scary. But that is duendes. So again, if there is a legend from where you're from or for what your family says, let us know down in the comments. We'd love to hear anything you've got. If you have a story of a duende of your own or of your family's, you can email us at ghostiespod@gmail.com. It's also written in our description down below. We would love to hear it. We will do another fairies, duende, fae-esque listener stories episode in the future.
Eventually. Sure. And we can dress up.
That would be fun.
As fairies.
I'll dress up as the duende. As a little old man.
Yes. Yes.
If you like this video, please like it, share it with your friends if you feel compelled to do so, and subscribe for more.
And with that,
we will see you on Monday.
goodbye.